Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome back to Overunder. Today I want to showcase some of my favorite hook spots on the map Eichanwalde for the class Widowmaker, of course, until Roadhog manages to find his way into propelling himself into the sky. Widowmaker is the only hero with a hook that's actually going to do anything. So I've been looking across multiple ways to approach Eichanwalde with Widowmaker in particular, and before I get into the hooks specifically, I want to talk about attacking this first point here as Widow and how you should kind of aim to approach it. Widowmaker for me currently is a hero that I like to play it a lot more for just fun more than anything else. I don't really consider myself to be competitively consistent with her, so I generally just play her in quick play. I lost my top 500 due to playing on my other account recently. The bar continuously getting set higher, but I'd love to play her more in competitive, and I think with up and coming buffs, I'll make a push for it. Ignore that text on the left, but when you're attacking this first point here, the first mistake you can really make as Widowmaker is to just exit out of this door here. You're like, the only advantage to this door here is access to this hookshot from this clock tower, which is, I don't even know what you'd call it actually. There's no clock involved, but it definitely is a tower. Maybe Rapunzel or some shit. I don't know. Something is inside that tower. It's definitely not a clock though. So there are a few hook shots out of this door which I consider to be advantageous, but I'd more consider using them like not at the first spawn. Your first spawn, what I would like to emphasize is that you want to exit out of this door here, and I think this is the strongest route that you can take at the very beginning of the game, because you can just open up the map immediately, and not a lot of people are expecting the Widowmaker, and surely not expecting them to come so early. And with this line of sight here, if you find yourself a Mercy, you know, a May, a Junkrat, just anything basically, and open up the map with a pick, that is massive. I can't really say much more than that, nor do I want to, due to this video being extremely long if I did. But however, plan B, there's a few different plans you can take here. So plan A, obviously move over here, try and get a pick, and if you can't get it, move on. Once your position is known as Widowmaker, the enemy will adjust their positioning, making it hard, a lot harder for you to get the pickoffs that you need. So plan B, you want to walk up these stairs, but care for Junkrat traps. I've noticed a lot of Junkrats tend to place traps up on these second flight of stairs here, so that's one thing to look out for. But similar to plan A, what you want to do is try and get yourself a cheeky little pick, but don't invest too much time. As I said before, your positioning is extremely important, and once the enemy knows exactly where you are, they're going to position themselves exactly where you cannot see them. So once these two plans have failed, the first opportunity I get, I'd like to go for this little grapple over the roof here. It's fairly easy to pull that off consistently if you focus it and or practice it like a couple of times. I will go back and elaborate exactly where to aim the hook if you don't feel like rewinding the video. But from here, I'd advise not peeking through this door for any more than, you know, one shot. As soon as you take the first shot after you flank, the enemy knows what's up. So it's a very, it's a shorter time investment, lower kill potential, I would dare say, and you also risk dying if you take the shot this close to the enemy. But if you can find yourself a Mercy kill, like something really high priority, this shot's probably worth taking. But a much safer option would be to take the longest path out of them all, highest time investment, highest time, you know, the time cost versus the opportunity cost, if you know what I'm saying. You get yourself a really large scope of the enemy backlines, and we all know where a Mercy likes to stand, the backlines. So that is kind of your highest priority. If you can find the Mercy, if you can find the Anna or the May or something along those lines, that's the head you want to dink first. But obviously a pick's a pick, and don't be too fussy. If you get a Zenyatta just sitting still, charging up balls behind a brick wall here, pop his head off. He doesn't deserve it if he's going to do that. But anyway, that's more flank specific, and then I could really talk about that more in its own little video. But I want to get on to the actual meat and potatoes of this video. Not that the flank spot isn't completely meaty, but before I do that, I'd like to elaborate exactly where to aim. So I like to aim normally around this area of the roof, I like to jump before I hook. And try to avoid hooking onto this roof here. This little ledge of the roof. I find that to be less consistent. But anyway, as I said before, this doorway does give you opportunities to make picks happen, despite not flanking. So the two main hooks in this area out of this doorway are this little archway on this roof here. Gives you a massive scope over the point. If we walk underneath underneath this destroyed building here, you have the ability to completely hookshot over this building. In general, it's probably a really risky move to make, but if you want to make it, or if it's situationally the move to make, by all means, fling yourself over a roof, put your mobility tool on cooldown, and put yourself completely behind the enemy. Not many people are going to really expect that from a Widowmaker, but it is a suicidal move, you know, a lot of the time. So I'd much prefer the pick hooks more than the flank hook in this particular situation. So moving on to the next one, I like to call this the Rapunzel tower shot. I don't actually call it that, but what it does do is gives you a really consistent hook. It gives you a really large hang time looking over common positioning places for enemy supports. You often find that Mercy, the Junkrat, the May, they all tend to stick around this broken down car, or whatever that even is. So definitely a very good hook to make, but you want to avoid getting the rim of the tower. You want to make sure you actually hit the tiles up the top. And the advantage of this spot here is the enemy won't really see it coming until you're above the tower. So I tend to avoid hooks like this, because if you show yourself underneath this choke point, the enemy can see you. Like they'll see you moving up, and they'll know that you're looking for the hook. So I try to pick hook spots that aren't going to immediately, you know, be given away before I even hook. So that's the reasoning behind not utilizing these back walls and stuff. Not to mention that they don't give you, you know, not always give you the best line of sight. Alright, so mostly just covering some of the more offensive first point hooks, which I generally prefer, to be honest. Widowmaker on defense, first point, Eichanwalde, not always going to be the strongest, but if you do choose to pick her, at least I want to impart a little bit with you, but there isn't too much I like to utilize. There's a couple hooks into the enemy spawn area, which are probably the two strongest, you know, things you can probably pull off consistently. Like, there's not much else to it. There's no massive flank routes that you're going to be wanting to take if you're on defense first point. But without further hesitation, I'll show these two hooks here. So they're basically two versions of the same thing. So there's for some reason, you have this ability to gain so much air on this map, which is pretty much the only reason why this defense hooks can even happen. But basically, between this, I like to call this the clock tower. I don't know why. I don't think it has a fucking clock in it, but this rooftop here, or this peak of the roof, whatever it's actually called, this point here and this point here, the two hooking locations that you're going to be wanting to look towards to get that immediate kill out of the enemy attackers. Both of them cover the spawn door, but they cover it in different angles. This one is a lot more inconspicuous. You're going to have less hang time and less of a shot attempt, but in general, the way you want to get the most out of the hook is by standing directly underneath the surface in which you're hooking to, and then obviously hitting the spacebar at the apex of the jump. This will help you get the most out of the jump. Obviously, you want to get the highest point of the hook, and try to avoid hooking from, you know, extremely diagonal positioning. It can work, but I find it to be a lot less consistent, despite the fact that I fucked the first two hooks up. But anyway, it takes a little bit of practice sometimes. The timings can be different, but don't worry too much if you mess up a hook here or there. But always the best way to get them down pat is just to practice them, and just get yourself into a skirmish like I have myself, and just drop the cooldowns to 0%. Alright, so back on offense. Let's just pretend your team has taken the first point in Eichanwalde. We're going to move on to the second phase of the map. These spots in particular probably aren't immediately going to be effective on the first life, as it will take the enemy quite some time to reposition into lines of sight to take advantage of with these hooks. But it's good to know them anyway. But these are going to be more effective, maybe if you've died once, you know, and the enemies are positioned up. But as soon as you move out of spawn, we can once again utilize the clock tower to have a pretty clean shot onto the street area. And a little bit onto the crow's nest. You don't get too much of a hang time, but you do get the shot that you're looking for, and it is pretty much the most immediate shot you will get out of the spawn. Moving on, this broken building here isn't the best to go for shots. I find you're really close to the enemy. You can find yourself getting shot out of the air. Like a McCree can most definitely hit you twice with the amount of hang time that you have, and also the close proximity that you're in. Not always the best hook to go for, but you can also use it to jump completely over. Maybe the enemies are pushed back and you want to catch up to your team a little bit faster. That's the hook you want to make. So if you do need to get over the building and back to your team, let's say you're pushing up, you know, quite further onto the point, you want to avoid using, you know, the clock tower hook and stuff like that. You only go for hooks that have potential to get kills, otherwise you're wasting Widowmaker's, you know, one of Widowmaker's best abilities. Obviously she has two abilities, so it literally is the best, but hopefully you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so let's pretend that you haven't taken the clock or the broken building hook just yet. Maybe you've been pushed back into, you know, your spawn a little bit and you've kind of, you know, pinned down from enemy fire and you want to get yourself a good pick off onto the crow's nest. One of the better ones to do is this yellow building here. It gives you a nice clean shot. And not a heap of hang time unless you really get quite high up onto the building, which isn't always desirable. As I said before, McCree, anything hit scan, or enemy Widowmaker of course, will be a massive threat the more hang time that you have. So be careful, like it's not always, you know, the greatest thing to be in the air for a massive amount of time. So speaking of time, I don't have much left in this skirmish, but also utilizing this castle will also give you very nice shots onto the crow's nest, also the lower platform, and a little bit onto the streets as well. Might need to concentrate a little bit, but you can also jump over that little bit of the castle as well if you do choose to do so. Alright, so that pretty much covers the offensive side hooks. Obviously there are, like, this map is so versatile, like you can literally make a hook shot out of everything, pretty much. It just boils down to your own creativity, and the enemy positioning obviously is probably the bigger factor, but creativity is also pretty nice. So the offensive hooks, I like to just keep it like down to those ones there. I think they're the most effective and less obvious than normal, but there is one pretty nice defending hook here, and I think it's most effective when you're leaving your defending spawn. Let's say you're respawning now, and you want to make something happen before you actually get into the fight, and this is a great way to make a play. So this castle wall here, the arched area, you can also use the flat surface I think, but I tend to stick to the curved area. You hook up at about that rim area, guess what that door is? That's right, that is the enemy attacking spawn door for point 2, and if you time it correctly and or get lucky, you can find yourself a pick directly as the enemy spawn. It's very similar to the clock tower shot and the other one that is very similar to it that peeks onto the enemy's first spawn door. It has the same effectiveness, but it's just in a different position. If you're not too comfortable for the longer range shots, you can also set it up from this point here. It just requires you to not be bad at hooking and actually press the spacebar in time. So yeah, that'll pretty much wrap up the hook shots in particular. Let me know if you have any hooks of your own that you consider to be extremely strong. Obviously, as I said before, hooks on this map are just everywhere. You can make plays in every damn area of this map, it feels like. But those are the most effective and or unique hooks that I've come across in my adventures on Eichanwalde with Widowmaker. So anyway guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Took a little bit of time to make. My voice is dying on the inside as I've recorded it many times over. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you later in the next video.